tribes that unified themselves with these rituals. And Hippocrates was a part of it, and he was also a practicing homosexual. And this shows the benefits of bleeding. The woodcut from the medieval poem of Salerno, that's where they have the medical school at one time, Salerno. To bleed doth cheer the pensive and remove the raging fires bred by burning love. They figure if this lady got sexually aroused, to calm her from being sexually aroused, they would bleed her. They would bleed you for headaches. They would bleed you for infections. They would bleed you for many reasons in medicine here in America. As I mentioned before, they bled George Washington as a means of trying to treat him. The system of European medicine has not changed. The myths have not changed. The techniques are different. But they're based on the same myths. I put him up here because this is Francostoro. In 1530 he wrote this medical poem entitled Syphilis sed morbis Gallicus. This is where you get the word syphilis from his poem. As you can see, he's in one of those clans, which you call today Bilderberg and Boulay and all those primitive European clans, how they bond themselves with various rituals based on bleeding, based on homosexuality, based on white supremacy, which is the ultimate goal of their clans. And this is part of the symbolism involved in the clan he's a member of. The older medical literature contains many examples of supposed results of bestiality. This the belief that man can form hybrids with beasts still persists as a legend, and the face of which was like the father was conceived in the imagination of the author. They still believe that the white man can breed with other animals. They still have sex with other animals, such as sheep today. This comes out of their mythology, out of their occult groups, as you call them, the Bilderbergs, the Trilateral, the Boulay, and all of them perform such activities along with homosexuality, bloodletting, and human sacrifices. And that's why they call it cockfights, and they still use animal terms when they talk about having sex today. Cockfight, bitch, and all these kind of terms that they use comes out of their old practice of having sex with animals. In the time of Queen Elizabeth, houses infected with the plague were marked by a green cross. During the later epidemics with a red cross. And the words were, "Love, have mercy on us." And they usually meant, "Love, have mercy on us, prepare yourself to die." The quarantine lasts for 40 days and 40 nights because it comes out of the biblical history of the Europeans. We, of course, us Africans, were, of course, using the hygienic system. We had ma'at and spirituality as a part of our birthing rituals and ceremonies, and this is from the Temple of Ethne, showing a natural birth in the squatting position, which is a natural position for having birth. The child, of course, is born as an adult, which means his royalty. And this position is the position used all over the world by colored people. Europeans are the ones who lay on their back, which decreases the blood flow to the child's brain and the blood flow to the pelvic girdle. And this is a symbol of ma'at and purity and purification, showing that this spirit, known as the baby, came from the spirit world. And this is the birthday of the mother. The baby is emerging from the womb, which is an emergency. I want you to have a grasp of what was going on in Europe and understand that we are still entrenched in the superstitions of the Europeans, and it's not going to go away in less than 150 years. They used the pus and stuff from, they were drinking the pus of the diseased people at that time as a form of vaccination and inoculation. And that's where they get these pus treatments that they put in your veins called vaccinations, because that was popular during that time. Someone who was dying and suppurating from pus, they take that pus and they would drink it so they wouldn't catch the person's disease. It has not gone away. They simply put it in a needle and inject it in your arm. You have to remember Queen Mary II drank a bowl of pus every day. These remedies have not gone away. They have just changed their form, but they're still entrenched in the mythology and superstition of Europeans, which you call modern medicine, which is nothing but a bunch of occult rituals and ceremonies. As I mentioned before, the modern techniques that they have was mostly the walled city, which protected their crops and allowed them to grow vegetation. They would burn the victim, burn the doctor that attended them, so a lot of doctors would leave town when a plague occurred. And this is how they thought of the brain, the ventricles in the brain, those fluid-filled spaces in the brain. The ventricles are the orbit of the soul, according to Albertus Magnus. He wrote Evil Magic and White and Black Evil Magic. And they believed these liquid-filled spaces in the brain was where the soul resided. They use the word psychic, which means soul today. They still think it resolves in that area. That's why they call it psychology, which means soul. Now, the Europeans believe they came from animals, and this is shown here. We had this embryo in the brain, this animal. They believe they had the reptilian brain. They believe they derived from a monkey brain, and they believe all that's in your head. Today. And since they think they are the center of the universe, this is where you get Europe. The oceanus, Arctic Ocean, the Atlantic Ocean, the Pacific Ocean. Now you have Europa. This is shaped like the brain. This is where the high thinking occurs in Europe. And the lower thinking, the reptilian brain, is Asia, and the animal brain, of course, is Africa. They simply put their white supremacy and racism into anatomy. They cannot escape their myths and superstitions any more than we can escape our African ancestry and culture. We are locked in our history and culture, and they are locked in theirs. They are not looking to be free. This is the ventricles of the brain, the dew, which you get this treatment called box flower remedies and dew water and mountain dew. That comes because they believe these vapors of the brain they could use to cure remedies, and they used to drink them as medicine at one time, and they switched to the dew water. Now they believe that the evil side of your brain is fighting the other side of your brain. The left hemisphere is fighting the right hemisphere, and this is what this is indicative of. And it's put in harmony. You see the zodiac symbols here. It's put in harmony here by the African principle here, which you have Ma'at, the feathers, and you have the intertwining of the stake, the serpentine fire, using all this African symbolism. You have the moon here, you have the sun, the yin and yang, male and female, and it's being rescued by the bird, which you may call the ibis. All this is African symbolism, and they destroyed the evilness, the woman there. She's in the ground, and they buried her. Of course, this is explaining how the brain works. And this is still true in African and European psychology. They believe you have this brain that tells you to do bad, and this part of your brain that tells you to do good. The myths and superstitions still continue today. And they try to explain the seven spirits, or what we call the chakras today, in the brain. The chakra effect in the brain. African people, of course, have 12 spirits here. The Orientals have 7, and Europeans have 2. And they're trying to explain the spiritual growth and development. They have the female principle, the male principle, the unity of all, Osiris, or the Star of David, as some call it. There's the moon, there's the sun, and these are the 5 ventricles in the brain. There's a half crescent. All this is going into the deep within the symbolism and the initiation into what you would call today the Boule, Trilateral Commission, Bilderberg Group. All this is secret information that I'm showing you. The point that I'm trying to make is that the Europeans' myths and superstitions have not changed. They just changed, gave themselves a new form to it, but it's basically still the same. Today we have these blood cleansings, these operations, these human sacrifices known as surgery, known as operations They cause a woman to have hysterectomies, where they're sacrificing her reproductive organs because of some evil spirit known as a fibroid or prostrate disease. The mythology and superstition base of it all is still the same. You have a country here, such as America, that performs over 70,000 operations a day. Over 50,000 operations are performed in doctors' offices. That's 8 times more operations that are performed in any country in the world. The entire American Army during the Vietnam War and the entire Vietnamese Army would be operated in one day, equivalent to what is being done here in America. That would be operation on both armies. That's what's being done every day here in America. The high amount of operations are based in the superstitious belief of the Europeans that they can correct a problem that's caused by nutrition with surgery and bloodletting and all these ceremonies. The ceremony of putting a sheet over you, the ceremony of putting a mask over you is entrenched in that superstition, calling that spiritual forces. 85% of the people that get ill will get well without the help of a doctor. Stress causes a lot of illnesses, but we are medicated for it. You have stress of the brain, of the flat muscles of the brain, which causes headaches. You have spasms of the muscles. You have spasm of your chest muscles, which may cause asthma. You have spasms of the muscles in your blood vessels that can cause high blood pressure. You can have spasms of the chest, angina, pectoritis. These are all spasms caused by stress and tension, which are caused the European doctors to give you medication, drugs. They try to drug away the problem with the evil spirit known as allopathic medicine. The problem with their allopathic medicine is that it's synthetic chemicals. The allopathic medicine used by our ancestors were plants. Allopathic technique is an African technique, but the way that Europeans took it to is called a spiritual worship of some evil force, and they're still in it. The most modern thing that's going on probably started in 1810 when they corked the bottle, and from there they progressed to Dynkin, which is tin, where you get the word tin from, who started the tin can, and from there they progressed into John Deere's metal plow around 1831, and then Borden started condensing milk around 1851, and in 1850 you got into the steam engine and refrigeration. All those are the modern techniques that help improve the eating of the European, which got them out of the disease state that they're in. But they are still very much diseased today. Their disease rate has not changed since we met them. They still suffer from these deteriorations, and a lot of them are sped up by the medical profession itself, which is entrenched in a whole lot of secrecy and a whole lot of rituals that have no foundation in science whatsoever. Understand, you have white blood cells that supposedly protect you from disease and infection. They protect the red blood cells, and the red blood cells have this melanin center in them. In other words, the white blood cells sacrifice themselves for the black blood cells, for the melanin-centered ones, for the red blood cells. White protects black color in the body, but the Europeans have reversed that process and have black people protecting white people in their armies and police force. This is part of the reversion of the process. But in nature, white is only there to protect black, to protect the color, and after that they die. But we are into a whole lot of rituals based on superstitions, the flat bread, the shape of the bread, the round bread, the upper crust. And we eat a lot of bread based on Sirius, the god that's supposed to come to protect you, which we call cereals. So we have a lot of breads that we eat coming out of European mythology. We have the flat bread, you have the cake bread, you have the cookies, which is a bread, you have the crackers, which is a bread, you have the flakes, which are flat bread, corn flakes, wheat flakes, that's another form of bread. We have the cereals, we have the chips, the corn chips, which is another bread. You have the tarts, you have the waffles, you have the pancakes. All this wheat produces a high amount of acidity, a high amount of deterioration of the body, because we into the bread, the Sirius god that was brought to protect the Europeans. And we don't see that there's a spiritual basis and superstitious basis with all this bread that we're eating. Europeans tend to treat disease. They don't treat the people. You should treat the person, not the disease. But they treat the disease because they believe that's an evil force that comes at night, either from a cold wind, and they call it a cold, which you cough and sneeze and all that sort of thing. And then when you do sneeze, they think your spirit's going to fall out your nose and you're going to die, so the spirit stays in. They say, God bless you when you sneeze. It comes out of European rituals and ceremonies. We have to free ourselves from their history, attachment to their historical lies, attachment to their medicine, and start bonding again with African medicine and African history so that we can be healthy again. This is a brief overview of European medicine, a Sikh history, a history of myths and superstitions that have not changed and will not change any more than we can change from being African and change ourselves from our African rituals and ceremonies. We have to walk away from it to be healthy. And I hope this gives you some insight into where modern medicine is coming from and why they do the things that they do.